Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a paid advertising. TheOnlyGround.com, the THE onlyground.com is one of the most amazing places for information that I consistently go to. If you guys want to have conversations about our old interviews or even topics that we don't discuss, the group of people that are on the onlyground.com message boards are some of the most brilliant that I have ever come across. Those little like knick-knack facts that we get here and there, that's where a lot of it comes from. Please check out the link in the bio.
Welcome to the show. I am MMA insider and Herb Dean's dog sitter, Joey Venti, and you're listening to the MMA History Podcast, the only podcast dedicated 100% to the preservation of mixed martial arts history. Interviews and stories about the early days of MMA direct from the men who lived it. Hundreds of interviews, thousands of hours of research, all conducted by the most obsessed mind in the business, the MMA detective Mike Davis. Join us as we document the history of the sport we all love.
Ladies and gentlemen, a part two to a very explosive first episode, which actually dropped the day that this is recording. Bas Boon, welcome back to the podcast. You had a lot to say on that first. Yeah, you had a lot to say on that first episode. The one thing that I've asked several people this, but none have been in the position that you've put yourself in. You've dealt with the Dutch Mafia, as documented in your books that are available on Amazon.com. You've dealt with the Russian Mafia, and you've also dealt with the Japanese Mafia.
Yeah, I did.
Can you explain us the difference between the three when dealing with those types?
I think the Yakuza is very traditional in their approach. And there is a lot of honor at stake. There is a certain way they do things, and basically that's how it's done. So you've seen a lot of those movies where they all work for this one boss, for this one clan, and that's how it's done.
So in Japan, there's a pecking order. Like they honor the hierarchy.
They honor the hierarchy, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now with Russia
is, of course, is a whole different ballgame. And the thing is, by saying is, you dealt with the Russian Mafia there. Okay, I had threats and a lot of people threatening me with the Russian Mafia.
Okay, that's a dealing.
The thing is, I am not easy. In my book, I describe this. I grew up on a gypsy camp. I've been on a gypsy camp for a while, and almost daily people would say that I kill you, or they would fight for loots, which were, people steal things the night before, and then the next day your stolen goods were stolen by somebody else and then they wanted to fight for the goods. And there was always crazy things going around. So I grew up in a very weird, between my from my 14th year up, I grew up on basically surrounding myself with people constantly, where there were the nightlife, shootings, bouncers, rip-offs. So I grew up like that. Actually was a normality, and so you wouldn't be intimidated pretty easy. And I think that later helped me a lot when I was dealing in the fight business. And I think in the fight game, there's different ways. But I have dealt. I mean, I've met some people who really had huge influence in Russia.
Underworld. Underworld.
In the underworld in Russia as well. And I've met, I've been to some very exclusive clubs. I did the first live show from Moscow as well, which was a live event, which was the first, actually, it was the first pay-per-view on Google, on YouTube. That was before the UFC, before anybody was there. I did the first one. It actually Googled it juggled the Google stock up and down, which was pretty amazing. And then, of course, the Dutch Mafia. And at the Dutch Mafia, it's hard to say if that it's run by a certain family or that there is thousands of members. There were certain organized crime groups
The
who,
Juliet gang.
well, the Juliet gang for one. I mean, but I unfortunately, I wouldn't say unfortunately, because I used it also for a lot of beneficiary things. So I'm a hypocrite to say that that would not be the case, but that was necessary in the position where I was in. So that knife cut on both sides. Yeah, the Juliet gang was like one of the most fearful gangs at that time in the Netherlands, and maybe even also partly outside of the Netherlands.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Their influence was unbelievable, undeniable.
Undeniable. But it wasn't. I mean, of course, I met a lot of them, and I dealt a lot with them, and I usually, I met a lot of them, but I never would be involved in their businesses.
Okay.
Because I tried to tell them, I said, look, guys, I am trying to build a legit sport, and it's impossible for me, which became very difficult, of course, because I know where you want to get at. You want to get at
Ari Pols.
Ari Pols and the Nyqvist thing. Pols, I knew Pols from Eindhoven. He was a former SWAT team member, and he basically went from the SWAT into the Juliet gang. So he went from police up to be a professional criminal.
Well, so it's kind of like when Russia fell. When Russia fell, you had the KGB and you had the Russian Mafia, and they kind of made business together. I mean,
it's different because, like I said, the Russian Mafia, there is a few big, huge Mafia clans in Russia. Same like you in Japan, you have the Yamaguchi family. There's a couple of huge families who are well known. I mean, it's well documented. In Russia, I described that in my book, for instance, how Heineken had to operate the Heineken beer. And I did that on purpose because the Heineken beer also had the Heineken kidnapper, obviously, which was Willem Holleder, who is later also in the book because he was the suspect behind the bombing of my partner who was blown up with his Mercedes, Ron Nyqvist. So it is, and that comes back into the book in a kind of morbid way, should I say?
Okay, so Ari Pols was the founding father of Golden Glory. He's also
no. He wasn't the founding father. It went like this. Ari introduced me to do a show. I could not organize any shows anymore or produce shows on European territory. They blocked the first one I produced was in Antwerp, the first one I filmed, and that the promoter was Henry Corbeel. Also, Godot helped a lot on that event. And then the second event we had planned in Emmen in Holland, which was by one of the biggest. Henk Kuipers was the person who was organizing that, and he later became the president of the Satudara motorcycle gang and No Surrender, which was one of the biggest motorbike gangs in the world. They had like 2,800 members. And Henk invited me to work together with him to find some fighters and also film the event. We made a deal. So I did 2 shows I produced. Antwerp, and that time there was so much problems because it was called human cockfighting, and the government got involved. We have to stop this because I know how to promote things, especially when the news is hot on it. And then basically I became a little bit a victim of my own success promoting it the way I did. 8 men in, 1 goes out. You get that. At that time, it was a little bit different. Blood sport, blah, blah, blah. At the end, we were not allowed to do it in Holland anymore. But Ari approached me, and it was funny because they just came out of a case where they had 22 years and 23 and 25 years lifelong sentences, many of that gang. And then Ron fled to the island of Aruba, so he wasn't there when they convicted.
So you're talking about Ron Nyqvist.
Yeah, Nyqvist, he fled to Aruba, and then what they did is they taped, I think one of the prosecutors or something, there was a tape, And because of the tape, it became a mistrial, and they all danced away from the 22, 25-year sentence. And then Ari came to me when that happened, and he said, "Look, we're celebrating, and can't we do a fight in Aruba?" And then the first fight I did there was during a boxing show where I actually had Ivo fighting Todd Medina.
Where they got into a fight. Like, I think Ivo was throwing chairs off the balcony at him.
No, later.
Was that later on?
The thing was that knockout was so heavy in the first 10 seconds. Ivo knocked him out with a knee, Todd Medina, that he had to go away with the ambulance, a stretcher. And then the second fight we did, that's called the World Vale-Tudo Championships, because I did it together with Frederico Lapenda. And that's also where we introduced Heath Herring. So Heath Herring came there the first time. And during that event, it was a very successful event. It was nicely organized. I met Ron, so Ari introduced me to Ron. And then we wanted to do a second one. And the first one was in a cage. So actually that was the third cage fight. And the Dutch Antilles is still Dutch territory. So when Holland said we're forbidding to do any cage fights, and they still saw, I invited some big magazines and TV stations there, and they still saw that we did a beach, we did a cage fight on the beach. It was a crazy. There was a Miami producer from Miami Vice, I think he came, and he said, "This is more wild than any film I ever saw," because we had the sea containers around the cage. And then the people were walking from the beach during the palm trees up to the cage. It was completely crazy as a cage fight. We were very excited too, very excited times. And then we did it. We wanted to do it again, the World Vale-Tudo Championships #9, which we did. But then the problem started that Holland was putting a lot of pressure on the islands and the politicians there to stop the event. So during that, we printed all the posters and everything. They say, no, it's got to be in a ring, cannot be in a cage anymore. So the problem started, the pressure from the politicians and the.
Okay, so he flees to Aruba. Yeah. Why? Is there no extradition out of that country?
No, but first of all, they couldn't find him, and I don't know if he went on his own passport or he went on another name. I have no idea, but he hid there for 9 months till the trial became a mistrial. That's what happened.
Okay, so yeah. Aruba is just by happenstance. Why does the government get involved in regards to shutting your operation down? Like, I'm talking the Dutch government. Why would they?
I mean, there's a lot of money going from Holland to Aruba in development projects and everything, and I think by me saying, "Oh, we're here, we're still doing a fight here with similar faces," I think it just became too much for them, and also with the people who were involved in it. So I think it became a thorn in the eye. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And
did you get along with it? Did you get along with Ari Pols?
Yeah, I get along very well with him, actually. Yeah, I did. And as a matter of fact, Ari, even after everything happened, he wrote me an email when Ron shot himself, and when he was twice, he was arrested after it for smuggling, I think, dope in Denmark or Sweden. I don't know, one of the two countries. And when he was released, he said, "Look, whatever you need, Bas, we're always there. You were correct. You did everything okay. You were good for us. No problem." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would you describe Ron Nyqvist as a person? I'm using my Chicago accent, so excuse me if I'm pronouncing it.
Nyqvist was a psychopath.
Was he?
Yeah. Let me tell you. I'll give you an example. So Nyqvist, he could be very charming, and he could be very thoughtful in many ways. So he would remember your birthday. There would be, he would send people from when he was in jail, for instance. He would always send people breakfast in your bed when you had your birthday, or he would come with a surprise when you're a member of Golden Glory. He would do those things. He would be very thoughtful, but he could also explode. And the day before he was blown up with the Mercedes, I went with him to an event in Amstelveen, and when I got back, I was driving the car, and he was with his girlfriend Cindy, and I dropped him in front of Megasports, which was a huge building, like a $40 million sports complex they were building, with where they had a lot of money in. Some of the gang members, and including Ron, had like 10 million in that building. And the twin brothers who were doing the real estate for Ron, those were the front guys. They were Rob and Erik Driesson. The twin brothers, they had they went to Aruba and gave their Mercedes to Ron to drive. And this is where later the Heinrich Willem Holleder thing comes in. Now Ron he drank a little bit during that event. So then he was arguing when I stopped him and dropped him at his car in front of the thing from who shall drive to his house, his girlfriend or him. So his girlfriend wanted to drive, and I said, no, I drive. And then so he walked around the car. So the doors of the Mercedes were still open. Normally they close vacuum, automatically like this. So because of the doors were open, I think the bomb went off premature when he stepped in with 1 foot. So then the pressure couldn't get away because the doors were open. So it blew off from the front and the back, blew a hole in his feet, and he had like 3 or 4 toes broken and some bruises and everything. So, but he was very upset. So when I drove away, I heard a huge bang. I mean, I was probably 25 minutes. I could have been in the car by saying, I'll drive you there, basically. It's crazy. And then...
so we're talking about Rob and Erik Driesson, the twin brothers that he later murdered. All right. So I really looked into that entire situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're calling Ron a psychopath.
Well, I'm describing. Listen, I'm describing
his attitude, like he's volatile.
Describing him that he could flip. When he would go out and he would have used cocaine or whatsoever, he could become completely, unresponsible, unhinged, not thinking about nothing, very angry, aggressive. Yeah.
Okay. So during that time, he was on a bender using a lot of cocaine.
Yes, there are several people who have been how do you say it? Witnessing that before.
Very well documented. Yeah. Very, that's there's no arguing there.
Yeah.
So Rob and Erik Driesson are in their place of business. Ron enters, and Ron claims to have heard.
No. I'll tell you exactly how that went. I'll describe it in the book too. What I did is the night before I was in his garden, and his foot was in how do you call it, a cask,
a boot, boot.
And he had used a lot of coke. There had been shootings on his house before, like bullets in his house where he lived, but when his kids were there as well, which he was completely freaked out about. And then he when he was in the garden, I could see that he was completely, like, he didn't sleep probably for 2 nights. He was running. When the first time in the hospital after it just happened, I visited him and we went over the situation. And he said, "Who could have done it?" I said, "Bro, make a list. Put 10 people who you think would get the most money if you die, and then tell me, go from there." That's my advice to him. And on top of the list, of course, the people who were the twins, but he couldn't comprehend that, yeah. Because they were his front men, they had it on their names, and as soon as they would have made a deal, he would have gotten the money. But officially on paper, Ron had nothing. Yeah, because it was all black money. It was money from criminal enterprises, and he couldn't. So that's how they invested it all in this big sport complex called Mega Sports. That was the deal. So the night before, I left early. So I was in the garden and I left early because I thought, shit, he was out of his mind. Yeah, he was very angry at that time. And then Kohemis, the trainer, was called in the morning around 5, but he didn't go up. He cut the phone, but he got up. And then very early in the morning, Ron went to the house of the twin brothers. Now, if that was because Ari before had the twin brothers kidnapped. That was on a Dutch, how do you call it? On a Dutch TV series where they said that Ari said, "No, I didn't kidnap them. We know them, and they came voluntarily." This is his story, yes.
Right.
But
right,
the TV said on the TV you can hear a guy named Hari Pen, who I met also in Aruba, who was one of the real estate guys. He said, "Oh, Ron is crazy, but Ari still can talk. Let me talk with them. Let me talk with them." When he was talking to Enstra, also a guy who got later killed, who bought that thing. They called him the banker of the underworld in Holland. Now, Willem Henstra had also a relationship with Holleder. He said he didn't, but there's pictures with him actually sitting on a couch where they have a meeting. So there is no doubt that they had a connection.
So Alister was the guy that was in charge of all of the Juliet gang.
Who? Sorry?
You said Alister? The guy sitting on the couch. He was the big boss. Holleder.
Holleder. No, Holleder was the guy who did the Heineken kidnapping.
Right.
He's one of the Heineken kidnappers. He was the main guy, but there were 3 or 4. Yeah. Okay. So Willem Holleder was the guy who was together with Henstra. And their scam, and I explained that in the book, this is also why that guy Ronald van Essen had to be killed. What they did is that a lot of people invested money, ecstasy money, people who could not go to a bank, and they would put it into the real estate from Enstra. And then when Holleder found out that Enstra was putting all that money into real estate, I think he started to extort Henstra. And then so the deal was, so for instance, somebody like Ronald would invest 20 million to whitewash it through real estate. Henstra would do this, and then when he finally needed money, or when the shit was sold and money came, then they would say, sorry, the money's gone, or you can have $1 million or something, but that's it. And then, of course, if he would become a problem, Holleder would come and people would be liquidated. That's basically the story. So what they would do, so the guy had the story. That's why they call him the banker of the underworld. They put money. People put money in him, and he would do this. Now later, he also bought the mega sports. Yeah, he did actually a deal with the twin. So there's for me no doubt about it, because Enstra was involved, that the person who did that bomb under the car of Nyqvist must have been Holleder or an associate of him. Because the only guy who would benefit, and Enstra himself is an idiot. He would not do anything. He would also not give the assignment to do things like this. But imagine Enstra would buying a building very cheap, pennies on the dollar, and then of course Nyqvist would never accept that. He would have 10 million in it, and he would not get it because it would be in a bankruptcy. So they had to get rid of him. So that's why they put the bomb under his car. That's what happened. Now, when he went there, let's go there because I know you want to hear about that. When Nyqvist went there, and he told me this. He told me exactly how this happened. Yeah, in jail. He went to the twins, and they said they were tortured because they had cigarettes being put out and have to buy Ari. That was on the television. That was on the television broadcast. This doesn't come from me. You can hear this on the television broadcast where Harry Penn tells on a tape. They have a tape. They taped it with them not knowing that it was taped. That he said, "Oh, I can get along with Ari, but." And then you hear but they kidnapped those twins and they're crazy, and Ron you cannot trust him. He's getting crazy. You don't know what he's doing. He's dangerous. But you can hear this on a tape, yeah. And then, for some crazy reason, Ron got this idea of how to maybe know for sure it was them. So what he did, and it was a smart move, but it wasn't a smart move on how he handled the case. But that is probably because he didn't sleep and he was under the coke. He went to the house, he went inside, and he said, "Okay, I have proof now who did it. Now explain to me exactly how this went, and you have a chance of getting out of this mess." And of course, they start denying it again, and then suddenly they say, "Oh, it was Ari. Ari, blah, and then he said, no, it was not Ari. And then he said, okay, come with us, we'll protect you. We can give you, we can put you. So the twins suddenly said to Ron, we can protect you. And Ron went like, what the fuck? What is this bullshit? And then he said, listen, I go to my car now. I'm going to get the proof. So that's it. So then the house had a little porch. So there was a big house, like a luxury house. So when he got out of the house, he closed the room to the living room where the two twins were. And he went outside, and then he goes to the second door, the outside door. He closes the door. You can hear the door, but he stays on the inside. You understand what he did?
Okay,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so yeah. They think he walked outside to his car to get the proof. But Ron didn't go outside. He waited in the thing and put his ear on the door to hear what the twins were saying. You got it?
Of course.
So they think this guy, and then of course the twins started, I told you should not have involved that guy. Okay, we all know.
All right. But the only one telling this story,
yes,
is it's coming from a drugged up Ron Nyqvist. Do you believe that story? Because the only person that's telling it is the one
there is no reason. There's no reason for him to lie.
I mean,
he got 20 years. I mean, he accepted. Okay. He accepted his fate, and there's no reason for him to lie.
He was heavily under the influence of cocaine,
but there's no reason for him to lie.
And you know,
look. I'll tell you why. If he would have gone in there, listen to me. If he would have gone in there, and he would have gone in blazing, because he was heavily under influence,
that's different.
I say you have a point, but that's not what happened. According to Nyqvist, he went in there. He said, I have the proof. And I know him. This is typically Nyqvist I'm hearing now. Yes? This is what he would do. He would be like that. If there was some robberies going on and some problems at the Havana Beach Club they have in Aruba, he did the same thing. He had things on tape. He would go to somebody and said, okay, tell me now, and then you maybe can go. This is Nyqvist. 100%. There is no doubt in my mind that is exactly what happened.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So when people, it's kind of hard to, in the United States, you know, I'm in Chicago. So it's, for us, it's like, oh, wow, this really sounds like the Wild West. Like this kind of doesn't really sound true. It sounds like it's exaggerated. When Ron leaves that area, he walks to a park where he sees somebody to borrow their phone so he can call the cops
actually,
on himself.
Actually, what he did is he went to a guy with a bicycle.
With a bicycle, yeah.
He said, please bring me to the police station. Then he gave the guy a 20 grand watch. He said, I'm not going to be needed this anymore where I'm going. So he got a guy with a bicycle dropping off at the police station.
It took 90 minutes for the police to come get him, even though they understood the seriousness of what took place. So you guys had very little pushback in regards to law enforcement.
I would say very little pushback. A lot of the things is it where you see cops also going bad. If you look, for instance, in the Martin Hoogland was who became a very big criminal, and they said that he was the one who shot Klaas Bruinsma, was a former cop. He was a policeman. He's a big, tall policeman.
Well, there's really only two types of cops. There's the ones that were bullied and are angry, want to write traffic tickets all day, or the ones that could have been criminals or might be criminals. There's really only two different types. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. But I must say it became a crazy situation for me, because now suddenly Japan had to deal with me again, and they thought they got rid of me after they dealt for Chanshin, and I had problems with Peter as a management, Peter Arts, and now suddenly they saw me, and they, in the beginning. So let's go back first, by the way, to the island of the birth of Golden Glory, because I think it's important to say that too. So Ari introduced me to Ron, and he was a straight shooter. Ari was an okay guy. Like, you could, if you make an appointment, he would be there. Ron would be the same, only Ron would have the sneaky thing. But I'll get to in how sneaky he was at the end. So you have a little bit of an idea what a rat he actually was. Yeah. So here's the story. When I was in Aruba and he introduced me to it, everything went okay, and there were not really a lot of problems. There was some little minor incidents where you could really feel already, I actually don't want to be involved. But it actually was me and Lapenda in the second show. So the world.
So Frederico Lapenda.
Okay. Frederico Lapenda in the show where World Valatudo number 9, which was in a ring, should be in the cage, but the politicians were there. There was a lot of pressure and shit going on. You have Gilbert Ivo running around with a knife who wanted to kill that Fabio Piemonte guy, which Dick Fry and Hans Nijman take the knife away. Actually, that's filmed. It's actually on film. You can see the whole situation.
Yeah.
So a lot of tension during that fight. And after the fight, there was a lot of people didn't came, sponsors stayed away because of this pressure from the Dutch government. So they lost money. But Ron was a promoter. Ron was never a manager, and he was never involved in the fight business. That was only his second show as a promoter. Me and Lapenda, we did a lot. That's why it was called World Valatudo Championships number 8 and 9. Yeah, I did the cage fights 1, 2, 3. No, I was the producer. That whole idea, the name, the branding, it all came from me. They were not involved. Now, so they were the promoter. Now, when things went really bad and there was a lot of money, lost at that event, I felt shitty again because they really treated the fighters, me and also the guys, good. Ron and Ari and everybody. So then Lapenda and me said, well, we could actually have some of these fighters who we have here make into stars. We can. I wrote a report for Gong magazine in Japan. Heath Herring would become a star. We could maybe launch him to get into Pride or into the K1, and of course we did. Yeah. So then the management thing, the deal for making a management team was born. That came from Frederico and me as a suggestion to Ron, because the money was lost as him as a promoter, because he was a fight promoter. And then we started thinking, and we came up with several names, and we came up with Pirates first, and with all kinds of names. And at the end, I liked Glory a lot, so I said, let's call it Glory or Glorious Glory. And then Ron came with Golden, and that's how actually Golden Glory was born, on that island. And that's exactly the way it went. So Frederico Miki had the idea of doing a management company, which would become like a fight stable. Rico later dropped back. He went into the film business. He was too busy with making movies in Hollywood. And he also didn't want to be involved in that craziness because he had other big fish to fry. And he had a very successful career. But of course, that was at the end, that was what happened. And that's how Golden Glory was born.
Okay.
Yes.
So Ron makes a lot of his money with ecstasy.
Yeah, well, all kinds of things. Whatever he can make money with. Yeah.
Okay. And that red pea is needed for production of it.
Yes.
And it's largely controlled. It's an oil largely controlled by the Chinese.
Correct.
So how does he thread the needle with that? How does he complete that?
I don't think Ron was I think that the biggest name still was Van Dalen, the guy who was in Limburg, who was the biggest ecstasy king, and later Tom Van Dalen. I told you about that guy in the first episode who bought that Greek island, which was one of my sponsors, by the way, the real Heisenberg, remember?
Yeah.
And Vanessa and the other guy Peter they were very big in the ecstasy in Limburg. And I think they were getting the gear, like the tablets, from them. I don't think Ron was importing any stuff or making those tablets himself.
Okay, so right, he's a middleman. Okay, yeah. You said Ron becomes a rat, and he ends up.
Well, let me before I go to on the police thing and on my thing, how he becomes a rat. You have to understand that the situation became really difficult when K1 got into a lot of problems, payment problems.
Okay.
And then
when the money started
when
slowing
the money
down.
stops, I told you always,
Yeah.
you know who your real friends are, yeah?
Oh,
Now I told Ron, I am busy with some big business people. Sit back, don't scream, don't yell, don't make problems, because at the end, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. So relax. Okay,
it's
he
true.
could not.
That's true.
It was
That's very true,
but
man.
it was impossible for him. So at the end, when I told,
Let me set the table. When you've got a guy like Ron that's always hearing yes and people are afraid to say no, they can't hear no one time without losing. Sometimes you've got to take a loss to have an even bigger win. And understanding that when it comes is very important.
I had huge fights on the phone and also sometimes in jail with crazy things. I described one meeting with me and Appy in jail. So
it's Appy Etcheld, who's still in the game.
Goes into jail, and he thinks he outsmarts me by telling me that I was getting money from Fedor, which was my deal anyway. I told you how that went. And but Ron knew everything. I would share everything with him. I would tell him exactly how things went, and he also had a part of it in it. So then when he tried to do that, and Ron was smart, he said he made the deal. He said, "Okay, I'll see you at 3." Yeah, but he knew Appy was going to come very late to maybe be there only 5 minutes. So actually, the Appy thought, I'm going to get late. I'm going to be there at 3, but it was from 3 to 4. So so then he was there an hour. And when Appy started to bullshit Ron with the stories he already knew, Ron jumped over the table and wanted to grab him. And then the guards needed to come. It was a big mess inside. So they had to let him go out of the thing. This was a big mess. Yeah.
And then how does Ron become a rat?
Okay, let me tell you. So
okay,
I'm first going to tell you the story how he became a rat up to me.
Okay.
What he did behind my back. Yes. So I made sure that we got a lot of money, and that the Golden Glory was sold, and that everybody got paid their amount of money with everybody. I was very straight in that. On paper, deal, lawyers, everything's legit. No fancy business. Zero. Correct. Okay, so I'm giving you an hypothetical. I'm not saying that was the amount of money. Could be more, could be less. But say that Ron got $1 million from the deal which was done. Yeah. Yes. For that, we would sell Golden Glory, the management contracts. We would just put it all away. Yeah. I had also a library which I sold. This is different than Golden Glory. That would be my content, which I created over the last 25 years. But I came with Pierre Anderon and I made that deal. Now, what does Ron do behind my back? He starts calling all the fighters and said, I'm gonna make a new fight management called Diamond Deckers. And you have to come with me. And he said, you should not be with Glory because Bas is still president there, and he cannot give you the good prices because there's a conflict of interest, which never before he would, make a headache about it when we were promoting under, Tour to Handle or whatsoever. So, and then of course, the fighters would start become difficult towards the new promoter who just paid all the outstanding for K1 and everything. And then people would say, oh, Bas still has a big relationship and it's Nyqvist behind the scene who's actually doing everything. It's Nyqvist who has the contact, who's doing the deal. It's not Bas Boon. So with that moment, of course, the guy who's in stocks and who has a great reputation and is one of the biggest oil hedge funds managers in the world, when that comes in his ear the whole time from people who don't like me and also want to take my place, I'm getting a lot of friction as president of Glory, if you understand what I'm saying. So he's taken away the fighters, promising a lot more money on the info he's getting from me, while he took the money on selling everything. That's how Nyqvist is. Doesn't give a shit.
So when we're on YouTube. So when he liquidated himself, people with egos like that, it's either they hit rock bottom because of addiction or they're looking at time in jail, which he had already served.
You gotta understand that Ron in jail had a status because of Golden Glory. I made a deal with SBS6 so he could see the shows on TV. And people would run around with a Golden Glory shirt or the Golden Glory logo, and he would be the one who was selling gear in jail, and would be the one. I am the one who is, I am the shot caller. I'm the one who was behind it. So it worked both ways. Yeah, it made him very big in jail as a shot caller, and
he ran the company from jail, parts of the company.
nah, he couldn't run any company from jail.
That's what the rumor was.
It actually worked because I was running the company.
Okay.
That's basically what. But credit by credit, if I would not have had Nyqvist, I would have no business in Japan or thing for a long time. The fighters would have been walked out, would be stolen or walked out already a lot sooner, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I am honest in this. Without him and the threat of that there was something behind me, which could be more problematic for the people trying to steal those fighters, Nyqvist was very good. It was a perfect situation. So the situation was Cor Hemmers was a perfect trainer to make the champions. I was the perfect management, and me and Cor Hemmers went back since I was 16 years old. And then, of course, Nyqvist came in later, but the threat with him on the back that if there were problems, not only with fighters, but there was, for instance, the famous incident with Alister Overeem, if you remember, with 5 bounces, which ended up in the hospital, and therefore his hand was screwed up and he couldn't fight in Strikeforce, which made Scott very angry. But that really happened. Really happened. But one of the bounces was really, and there were like complaints, police. If that would have been a real case, but Alister would never have fought in America. He would have had a criminal case.
Him and his brother got in a fight with the bouncers. Yes,
his brother, and then he helped the brother. It doesn't really matter the details, but it was all over the news, so everybody knew about it.
In our interview with Overeem, we addressed that. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, and then Ron was the one in jail who arranged the situation that there would not be any how do you call it?
Conflict, problems.
Like the guy would not go to the police and file a complaint.
Okay.
Because if he was doing that, the moment he would have done that, there would have been a criminal complaint. And then as a fighter, you can forget it to enter America. That's it.
Okay. So let's talk about Nyqvist when he liquidated himself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that story, or do you think maybe his partner did that? His wife?
No, this is typically
his girlfriend.
Nyqvist. No, this is typically Nyqvist. People say that it is the father of the girlfriend, or the girlfriend was involved. I know Nyqvist, man. The problem with him was he wanted. I just told you. He thought I got money from this deal, and I'm gonna how do you say it? Put a new management with Ramon Dekker. Then Dekker died. If you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like he had a bicycle accident.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, that was really an accident. There's no funny stuff going on there right there. He had an accident, but of course, Ron wanted to use him and his name and Diamond Deckers as how do you say it? As a management company, fell completely apart. His world fell completely apart. And then when he got outside, first of all, he thought there was a contract on his head. He thought that people would. I have those tapes, by the way. I got some tapes where he talks about Hans Nijman, who got shot into a couple of pieces, and then they first thought that he was involved because he spoke with Hans Nijman. He didn't like that Hans Nijman was in the corner of Gurkhan Saki. After that, he went to Glory and everything, and then that didn't sit well with him. And so he went there and he taped conversations with Hans Nijman as well. And there, the word Holleder was mentioned again. Was it him? Was it him not? So he's telling certain things on tape. That's also in my book. And I don't think actually Hans Nijman was involved with that. I think Hans was involved with other shit, but they did, he got I think there were so many bullets used that he almost was cut in half. That's how bad it was, that attack on him. And Nyqvist thought, hey, wait, you know what? There can be an assignment. There can be so Martin Hoogland was killed the same way. You're released a year before you go. If 2/3 of your sentence has been done in a Dutch jail, they'll release you at certain times to have a weekend. And then you have to.
Yeah, they give you weekends out to acclimate to society.
Yeah, acclimate. You have a little ankle thing on and so on. And in that time, they killed that Hoogland because he had the same time when he was released all the time. People knew that the routine, and that's how they killed him. Now, Nyqvist, he was not paranoid for no reason because he created enemies, so there were people after him, and he thought, I don't want it. Just give me the sentence. Don't let me go out and in and out and in and out and in. So then one time he didn't go back, and he was hiding in Austria or something. And then people say, oh, he escaped from jail. He didn't escape. They let him go in the weekend, but he didn't come back because. And then he had his lawyer tape the conversation. His lawyer said, look, Nyqvist just wants to sit his time. Let him all go, or let him do the time, but don't let him go out on the same times because he's afraid for his life. Yeah. And then they also said that he wanted to tell the police about Hans Nijman, but the police didn't trust Nyqvist. And that's why they thought maybe he was snitching, because but Ron did his time already. If he would have been snitching, it would have been way before, not at the end when he is released.
No,
that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense to me. So then they arrested him with an arrestation team again in Austria. Then his lawyer, then the sentence was 1 year longer. Actually, they wanted to have 5 years longer, but they could prove that he actually was in contact with Justice and that he wanted to make a deal. And then he got back. But to get back when he was in the parking lot and shot himself, this is typically Nyqvist. He goes with the girl, he has an argument and nothing goes well. He's in a grocery store in a shitty car. All the fighters are gone. He has no status anymore. The average junk on the corner is more dangerous than him. Nobody knows him anymore. And he just, according to what the girl says, like, oh, you don't think I cannot do it? You don't think I won't do it? And boom, he pulls the trigger. Now, if you ask me, Ron could be a person like that. He could be completely under the influence of, very angry at a certain moment, and be very unpredictable. So if you ask me, yes, he could. He could have done it. Yeah, he could have done it himself.
Was he no money at the end? Did he not have any money at the end?
I think at the end he had about 100 grand left, maybe 80 grand.
He can blow that in a weekend.
Anyway, I'm just saying that's what I think.
That's a good weekend. Yeah, it's a good weekend for him.
Anyway, but this guy had 10 million, according to him, 10 million in that mega sports thing, which I think, by the way, was true. I think they did invest a lot in, and that was their base. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Ron is he's an interesting guy.
He was charming too. He was a good-looking guy. He had the same scar. He had a little bit the Al Pacino thing, like the scars around his. One time with razor blades, they had a problem. I think the first time he went to jail, he had a thing here, like a big scar. So they would call him like Scarface as well. But he was a handsome guy. He was a good-looking guy, and like I said, he would be very charming too.
They all are. If you ever dealt with anybody that's high up in any criminal organization, they're all charming. It's like you can rule by fear, but you also have to, if you're making decisions, you have to be charming. You spoke about bouncers. Koos Hertogs. He was a bouncer and a wrestler from Hague. Koos, Koos, Hertogs. Hertogs.
Koos, and then what did
he was with Hertogs.
Koos Hertogs doesn't say anything to me.
The bouncer that was the serial killer worked for the Juliet gang. Cornelius Stalk, who was a very powerful judge, was in a relationship with him. You never, as I know, he used to come to the events. No, you didn't know him?
No.
Okay.
No.
What about Karate Bob, the Yugoslavian ex-spy?
I met a few Yugoslavian guys, yeah, who were in that gang. I did meet them, yeah.
So he was kind of like a famous person in Holland. He was I think what they referred to as an unwanted immigrant.
Look, I'm not saying that it was him who I met. I said I met some
Yugoslavian
guys. Yeah.
Okay. Frederico Lapenda.
Yes.
How did your relationship? Do you still have a good relationship with him?
Still good relationship.
Okay, because I know he got out of the game.
Oh yeah, out of the game. He went into the really into the Hollywood filmmaking, which was his dream anyway. That's why he went to the UCLA, the film school in Los Angeles. His dream was always to make movies in Hollywood.
All right.
He became president of the Beverly Hills Film Festival. I made a movie with Frederico as well called Bad Guys, which actually did pretty well.
I don't think you were involved like outside of Holland at this time, but March 30th, 1996, the IFC Ukraine, they have a show where there was
there.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah, I also know the promoter, Igor of George Kobliansky. He got shot twice in his back because of it.
Who's this?
George Kobliansky.
Okay. There was a lot of conflict and issues with that event, including the smuggling of the tapes in order to get them out of the country. Bring us to that event.
In my library, it's called The Night of the Diamond. That show, it's got Floyd the Mangler in it, I think. That show you mean, yeah?
Yeah, it's got Buddy Albin, Andy Anderson's there. Art Davey was allegedly involved. I know Charlie Anzalone is the ring announcer.
The fighter. That was the one with where is Igor Vovchansin for the first time, and also what is it? The Floyd the Mangler, or what is it? That huge black dude, Floyd the Mangler, correct?
I don't have the card in front of me.
Yeah,
I don't.
I think that was they were there. Yeah, and Bas Rutten was there as well, I think.
Okay, so when we interviewed Ron Meyerowitz and a few other people that are familiar with the show, they say there's a big conflict with the UFC and Art Davey is involved. Did you have any idea?
Well, I know Art Davey personally very well. Actually, he has the same birthday as me, so we always congratulate each other on the same birthday. And I had a company with him on Avenue of the Stars in Los Angeles as well. So it's funny because I was the one who came with Golden Glory, and later was the Glory, and he came with the UFC show, and both were born on April 5th. It's kind of funny if you think about it. But at those times there were always problems. But I must say that Art Davey is a very nice personality to not only to do business with, but also to have as a friend. I really like Art Davey. And I know there were problems at that time at those shows, but that was inherent on Russian shows. The third Russian show I write in my book too, there was a fight, and the fighter, Rodney Fafiras, he's beating the shit out of Bichkov. The guy was Bichkov, a Russian fighter. And then suddenly they stopped the fight. And I was like, why did they stop the fight? And then I think he knocked him out, or he knocked Bichkov out. And then I wanted to continue the fight. I said, but he got knocked out. I'm like the producer, you understand? I was running around. And then I went to the judge tables, and I see two people with a gun sitting at the referee table with the head judge, and they say, okay, fight continues. They let the fight continue. You can see that actually. So there's a guy with a gun next to the judge, and they say the fight needs to continue. He didn't lose. He didn't lose a knockout. It needs to continue. But I was upset because I wanted to have it probably, for the camera too. Okay, the guy knocks him out, he wins, or he gives a knockout. Now the fight is over.
And the next fight.
Why are you restarting the fight? So I come out of the truck, I went to the thing, and I see that the guy, I say, okay, yeah, I understand. That was it. Yeah. And the guy,
I agree. Yeah,
I agree. And the guy who was involved in the Kiev show, I think that was George Kobliansky, and he told me later that he was shot twice in the back because of that whole mess. Yeah, but he survived. And I did good business with the guy.
And you had Ron Van Cleef was involved. Andy Anderson. What was your dealings like with Andy Anderson?
Nah, I didn't have dealings at that time with those guys. I actually had a dealing directly with the guy who promoted the show, which was Kobliansky.
Okay, so it was the first time you guys actually met then. Okay.
Yeah, I actually met later. I met Kobliansky later, the promoter, and I started doing shows with him too. Then he started the Absolute Fighting Championship. That was after the Kiev show.
That was a fantastic event. Yeah.
Okay, those absolute fighting, the first
Phenomenal.
Bias, the first 32 with Igor Vovchanchyn in it. That's
Phenomenal.
That's Kobyliansky who organized it. Yeah.
Igor Vovchanchyn, they don't make men like him. Vovchanchyn is just built for tournament fighting.
Those times were great, man. Bare knuckles. You have the smaller, the David Goliath situation the whole time, and the smaller one wins. You cannot as a Rocky script writer. It's difficult to write it the way the shows went at that time. Yeah,
they shouldn't have gotten away from that. I don't think they should. I still love those fights.
Yeah.
So when Too Hot to Handle merged with you.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like
it didn't merge with me. Like I was the producer in the first show, and then later I was also a promoter. So I promoted together with them, but that stopped after the second or the third show because there was too much shenanigans going on. I'll give you an example of the shenanigans, so it's nice for the viewers to know. So it's just one small one from the chapter from the book. So say there was Too Hot to Handle. Now the first Too Hot to Handle, people would buy VIP tables, yeah, and they would buy those VIP tables, and they would be like 10 grand a table. But Mark, who was also one of the promoters, Mark de Weert, together with Appy and other things, they were taking sponsor money from several how do you call it? Red light bars, yeah, where you could go with a girl upstairs, blah blah blah. To make a long story short, I don't know exactly what happened, but there were some unpaid bills from the first Too Hot to Handle. So the tables were not paid for. 10 grand here, 10 grand there. And according to later to the people I spoke with, was because they were hanging around there with girls the whole night and they just got the bill paid. And it wasn't paid, so they just took it from the table. Yeah. Now, I didn't know anything about that. That is a thing I heard later. So when we were at Too Hot to Handle number 2,
yeah,
we were going to get Diamond Decker on the front page with that elbow and on the poster. But they wanted to have, Amsterdam wanted to have Ernesto Hoost on the front page with the thing. And we said, no, Ramon is more popular, he draws more people, which was actually true. But of course, Hoost would had a used name as well, of course, in Japan. So, but he wasn't that much of a draw in Holland. I mean, people would come for him, but he didn't have that Ramon Decker thing. Make a long story short, we put them both, we divided the poster, blah, blah, blah. A lot of headache between Team Amsterdam and Team Holland. Now, Team Amsterdam is Appy Etcheld, Vadim with Mark de Weert and those guys. And I was there with, on the other side, at that time, I was there with Kerr. And then later also Nyqvist was involved. And we were sitting there and we go like, okay, well, the prices. Yeah, we can let Ernesto fight for 100 grand. That's what Amsterdam said. Okay, 100 grand. I mean, I know he was making that type of money, at least in Japan, or he should be making that money in Japan. And we said, okay, well, Ramon needs to have a similar, but that's kind of high. Ramon makes a little bit less, but he has a bigger draw. So there was constantly this thing about prices, about this, about this goal. Anyway, so 100 grand. Now, the event is gone, and I'm hearing later, by coincidence, a friend of Ernesto sits in a bar, and he said, how much did you got what was the money you got for the fight? He says 50 grand. You're like, what the fuck? 50 grand went into the pockets of Team Amsterdam. There we go. So there already, and then of course the response was when Ron confronted them with what we found out, then Appy would respond, well, you said there was going to be a sponsor, and the sponsor didn't came. Now Ron did promise a sponsor, but the sponsor at the last time said no. So there was no ring floor with that sponsor. So you cannot, I mean, if it's not, it would be a different ball game if the sponsor would be on the ring floor and then say, oh, he didn't pay, but and take the money. But that didn't happen. But on their side, they say, oh, where's the 50 grand? Oh, it's from the tables, from the first Too Hot to Handle. We still had an outstanding. So all of a sudden you get the excuses
and the confusion.
And
Yeah.
when that shit happened, I went like, oh no, not again. No, not this shit. So I said, listen, I don't want to get involved in promoting anymore. Like, it's too much headache, too much people with shenanigans, too much problems every time. Like, just let me, I'll be the producer. I'll film, I'll get my videos, I'll come up with a sponsor or with an amount of money, I'll do the TV deals, but I'll stay out of the promotion business because that was too much of a headache. Yep.
Yeah, you're becoming a money collector at that point, with people that don't want to pay. That's
Absolutely. But there were some funny stories too. Like one of the Heineken kidnappers who was involved in the beginning with Holleder. I knew him very well. He had a shop. It's a crazy story. I gotta remember his name. I'll get to his name soon. But he had his shop in. He had a company called Flinders Escort, and it would be an escort service. And he said, "Okay, I want to sponsor Bas. Where are you?" I said, "Oh, Okur Hotel." I said, "Okay, I'm coming." But he had a huge stutter. The guy, he stuttered. He was all stuttering. So I was trying to pick up the money in the Okura Hotel in Amsterdam. So I'm arriving there, and he sits there completely coked out of his mind downstairs. And the people were coming to him, like from the hotel, the president or the guy who was owning the hotel, who was running the hotel, said, "Please, can I get the presidential suite?" Because some ambassador from a country was arriving, and they needed the presidential suite. But of course, he booked that presidential suite for some famous gangster in Holland, and they had like 3 hookers up there, his hookers from Flinders Escort. And they said, "Can we not move you to no, I paid for the room, bullshit, I should stay there." He made a lot of problems. So now the ambassador needed to be in another suite on the other side of that top floor where they had special suites. Of course, you understand it became a big mess because what happened, of course, the guy is smelling all this weed, the ambassador, the weeds coming from that door, and then he goes into the lobby, and there is naked women running around on high heels, completely coked up out of their minds, and he's complaining like, "Kind of, what is this? Where have I been landed?" And then, of course, they said again, "You have to get this horse away. You have to get this horse from the floor." And he said, "Why are they always so engaged with my horse? What is it? Why everybody likes my horse so much?" And he's drunk and coked out of his mind, and it's just hilarious. And at the end, they shoot him in front of the Bugaccio. This is a little bit later, and they shoot him in front of the Bugaccio, where he dies in a rain of bullets in front of a whorehouse. So he was in the whore business, and he died in front of a whorehouse. I'll get the name soon. It doesn't bring me. I don't get it into my head right now. He had a thing called Flinders Escort. That was the name. Flinders Escort. Yeah, Flinders Escort. Flinders.
Yeah, that's the game, man.
Yeah. So that was those times. Those times were completely nuts.
So was he involved in the red light district then? Obviously,
he was. I mean, there were a lot of them were involved in the red light district from that.
Like Free Kamaker.
Yeah, but they were more. They were not the people. I mean, they were in the Martjin Kok was his name. That was the name. Okay. Martjin Kok. Yeah. A lot of people were involved, but not the ones who own or who were the owner on paper or who were the people who were the money behind. Hamakers was more of a muscle guy who was in there to run, to run the doors, basically.
You also had a friendship with Thom Harinck.
Thom Harinck, yes.
Thom Harinck. Yeah, you started Nico Sports, Eindhoven, equipment and management with him.
Yeah, I mean, I started the sports store very young when I was 17 in Holland, and it became very famous, called Nico Sports. Nico Tushogo, actually, which means sun temple in Japanese. And I was the one who supplied the first gear for many of the events, like the boxing gloves, the shirts, boxing ropes, things like that. I was supplying the gear.
So you were a senior in high school when you first made your.
Yeah, like I said, I was 17 years. I was 17 when I opened my first store. Yeah.
How influential was Thom in your your rise to where you became?
Very. As I knew both, yeah, I knew Corhammers at that time too, and Thom. But Thom, in the beginning, I had a much more. Me, Thom, and Corhammers would organize events together. Yeah, I was one of the youngest promoters at that time. At the end, I ended up doing 300 events.
You can't say you were one of the. You may have been the world's youngest promoter.
I probably was the world's youngest promoter.
Yeah, I mean, or 17.
Yeah.
So high school.
I was 17 when I started the shop, and then from there on, I started promoting a little bit later on. I don't know if exactly it was 17, 18, or 19 when I was started, but I started the shop and the promotion not long after that. So yeah, I was one of the youngest promoters. But I remember with Thom, I went my first time, which where I really got addicted to the fight sport, was when I went with Thom and Branko Cikatic to Miami, where he fought Don Wilson. And that made a lot of impact on me. I did some sparring with him too at that time, and I later became good friends with Don Wilson as well after that fight. I liked him a lot. I think
did Don ever approach you to do fake fights?
Who?
Don the Dragon Wilson. Did he ever approach you about setting up a fake fight?
No, I only know that I was a little bit pissed around that fight because in the fourth round, Branko gives a low kick, a perfect low kick. And it is stopped. The fight is stopped, and it says it's an illegal kick in the knee, which was of course retarded because it was kickboxing. And it wasn't that they only did fights or kicks above the waist. It was really kickboxing with low kicks. And they cut that round short. Just look at it. So you can do it online, no tape. But Wilson fought a very smart fight because Branko was basically pissing blood. He was eating his own muscles before that fight to make that weight 79.48, whatever the weight was. Branko was a heavyweight already. So he had to come down a lot to make that weight. So the longer the fight did, the less
effective
Branko was. And that was a smart game from Don Wilson. He played a good game. But that whole thing, I was in the Miami Peabody Hotel, and I was young, 21, 22. And the fights and the whole thing around it, that made me hooked. Later, I did a seminar at John Grady's USA Karate, but it made me hooked. It made me hooked. That was really the beginning of where my eyes were opened in this. I remember I walked around and I looked at the parking place, and there's all these big Lincolns and Mercedeses and Ferraris, and I went like, I'm gonna make a lot of money in this business, man. That was literally what I said to myself. Yeah. I'll give you an example. By the way, I didn't have any money at that time, but I did. I made an appearance that I did. For instance, I found a great scam, which I do. I wasn't sleeping in the Peabody. I was sleeping in another hotel because I had to pay for my own trip, and they were putting in there from the promoter. Yeah, so they were sleeping in this very fancy Peabody hotel with ducks running out of the elevator and all kinds of craziness. And I remember I would say, guys, you want to eat something on my expense? Like really fancy restaurants in there, yeah, like steak and everything. And I would pay for the whole group and everybody, and the bill would be like 2,400. But what did I realize with the breakfast is that people would put that on their room, on the room. They would put it on the room.
Charge it to the room. Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go into the payphones downstairs, and I would just call the room, several room numbers, and then it's like, hello, is this Harold? No, you're speaking with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith? John Smith? No, Carl Smith. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, I got the wrong number. And then I knew Carl Smith would be in room 228 or whatever the fuck. So I would then go to the restaurant and sign a 2,400 bill on Carl Smith, room 286. And the only thing they would do is just look in the computer if Carl Smith would be in 286, and they would let it slide. And I would do, of course, every day a different guy, because you don't know how long they're going to stay in the hotel or check out. So I did it like a couple of times. So it would look like I had a great ball of money, but I didn't. I was scamming.
I pay. I got you right on me.
Okay. Yeah. It wasn't really neat, but okay, here we are.
So Branko Cikatic, there was a rumor that he was a money collector.
Nah, Branko was a great guy, man. He didn't need to collect money. Look, yes, Branko was in Yugoslavia, and he was a different guy than Mirko Krokop. Krokop was he got the name. He was a cop, yes. And Branko came from a completely different background. Yeah. But that didn't make him a big criminal in that sense. Yeah. And Branko, of course, the Yugoslavian people were really proud of him. He was the tiger of Croatia. So obviously, also the Yugoslavian mafia, which was in Holland, they had very much respect for him.
Okay, so Mark Kerr comes from the UFC into Pride. His first opponent is Branko.
Correct.
It seemed like Branko wasn't.
Actually, I was there. I think I was there. The first KRS show. Yeah.
Yes, you were.
Yeah.
And it appears that Branko is more intent on injuring Kerr through illegal moves rather than allowing him to kind of do his thing.
Actually, it was funny. I'll tell you a story. I'll sure Thom Harinck will how do you say it? He will confirm. So there's two funny stories. The first story is that they were in a negotiation with them for the fights for Branko, for how much money he should fight and what he should do and blah 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 blah. And then there were, of course, the rumors like, okay, well, is it a fixed fight? If it's not a fixed fight, and because he gave, there were wrestling involved and there was a lot of money involved. And then I said out loud, and I should not have said that. I said, Tom, why not just accept the money and then just knock him out anyway? You know, like this, really loud. And it was not appreciated at that time. But I thought it was a funny situation. Well, I'll tell you another story which was a lot funnier. We fight that one of the main guys of the Yakuza at that time his name was Akira Koshikawa. He was involved in that thing. Now, Koshikawa always held those dog fights as well with the Tosai Inui. That's a Japanese fight dog. And I remember that Thom Harinck, me, Branko Cikatic, Peter Arts, and Nick Bloomberg, we went in one of those vans. I still got pictures of it as well. There's in my book. The pictures are in my book. With he had 3 Mercedes with his initials in the grill of the Mercedes, ACK, Akira Koshikawa. And then while we were driving to those dogfights after Peter Arts fought in Japan, we had a 5-hour drive. So we arrived in the morning from Nagoya. I think we went to the dogfight thing. It was cold, but we had this van. And I never drink alcohol, but the only thing there was beer, Heineken. So they were feeding me on a sober stomach, nothing to eat, Heineken after Heineken. And of course, I'm getting like drunk, pissed, which I normally not because I never drank alcohol. And I started singing songs, and Branko wants to sleep, and they're all annoyed with it. And of course, I'm getting more and more funny, and Peter loved it. Peter asked because it's typically Brabant humor. Anyway, make a long story short, we are arriving at the fight where the dogs are fighting. And that's 2 Japanese Yakuza clans against each other, and huge bets are made. You see, I mean, the dogs getting steroids, you know, in the post, but there's a lot of money at stake, at these dog fights. And so Peter and me running around the camp, and it's still very early, and it's cold. It's really cold in Japan at that time. So they have these huge trucks where these dogs are, and under the trucks have a special. There's like 6 people they can sleep there. They have it's hot. They make like a little heating thing there, and you can sleep there. And a lot of people do that. Now, Tom and me and Branko, we were also sitting there, but I needed to piss the whole time. I couldn't sleep, and then because I drink so much beer, I needed to go out the whole time to piss. And I needed to step over people, and then I started singing a song again, and they hated that. So Branko and Tom said the whole time, shut up, Bas, with your bullshit. You cannot sing. Your singing talent is not appreciated. And of course, Peter loved it. Art thought it was the best thing in the world. And then suddenly, a big problem outside. Now, I got so drunk and stupid that I went into the wrong truck. I went into the Yakuza clan on the other side, which had a similar truck, and I started singing there, which was not appreciated at all. So now a big problem came. They had to get Branko there and Tom to assist the whole situation down. And I didn't even know what it was about. And Peter pissed himself laughing. He couldn't stop laughing about the whole case. It was hilarious. And then at the end, I go like, hey, sorry. You know, like the thing. So there was almost a big crash about this whole thing because they did not appreciate it at all. They didn't think it was funny because they were losing money as well, I think, the night before or whatever.
So Branko Cikatic is Mark Kerr's first opponent. He kept throwing elbows at the back of his neck. Did he just try to get
I
disqualified?
think for Branko it was difficult because Branko was the first K1 winner, and that's really kickboxing. And Branko comes from kickboxing. Now he's a strong. I mean, he's a double muscular guy, man. He's very strong from his nature. And I think it's just if you suddenly fight in a rule where a lot more rules are allowed, it's very difficult for a fighter who has been trained his whole life in a certain manner to
Change. Yeah.
to change.
Adjust,
And I think it just came natural to him. It was just the solution he had by somebody diving to his leg, just to elbow him in the head. Yeah.
I mean, he was grabbing ropes, elbowing.
I know.
Mark Kerr goes from there to Pedro Octavio, where very uneventful fight. Hugo Duarte. It seemed like the fighters in Japan would intentionally do things so they knew they were going to lose and they wouldn't allow Mark to look good. Did you get that?
No, I don't know. I think the problem with Mark Kerr, of course, was also his addiction, obviously. I actually liked him. I went out with him one time in Los Angeles with Lapenda. No, Lapenda wasn't there. I was there with Peter Aas, Bas Rutten. Crazy trip. I'm not going to tell you. You read it in the book. It's completely nuts.
Good.
Just imagine Bas Boon, Bas Rutten, and Peter Aas with Mark Kerr and Appy Etcheld from the Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu Club in one truck going out. If you read that story, it's funny as hell, man. I'm just telling you.
Good. I'll post a link in the bio as well.
Yep.
Vadim Finkelstein, the M1 owner.
Yes. Vadim.
Was he an easy guy to deal with?
He was. First of all, he spoke Dutch, so that helps a lot. His Dutch is actually really good. Yeah.
That's wild.
His English is also not bad. And I think at that time also he was quite young. I mean, when I dealt with him, he was doing good in his meat business. That was coming up, and he just had that Red Devil energy drink he produced. And I found him a good guy to work with. I didn't really have that much of a problem. I think the problems came because of Appy. Appy was always afraid that he would be on a side track and not be important enough, or would miss a dollar here or there. And I think that the pressure came more from him. And I also think that at the end that Vadim got tired of it because Appy threatening with Russian Mafia, and that basically that would be pointed back at him because he was the one who he was doing business with. It wasn't good for Fedor. It wasn't good for Appy. It wasn't good for nobody.
Well, here when was it Pogodin had Fedor? Vadim gets Fedor away from him.
No, Vadim didn't. I got him away from him. I made that. Remember, I told you what I did about the $50,000 with Pogodin and the belt.
Okay. Yes.
I went to Inoki. I went to St. Petersburg or Moscow. It was St. Petersburg at that time, and I had the people from Bombardier, from Inoki, coming over. So my lawyer Mijatovic, the lawyer Mijatovic came to there. And also some delegation of the promoter from Kawamata. So there was a Japanese delegation at that event, where they also would wear the Inoki Bombardier T-shirt, which footage I later gave, that Fedor would at that time sign with us basically, and would fight in Bombardier. Yeah.
Okay, so the Japanese kind of war of promotions takes place.
That was the biggest was a nuclear bomb. That was the third nuclear bomb that went off in when I pulled that stunt.
And you were playing with
nuclear bomb that went off in Japan. Yeah.
And you were playing with a lighter.
I was the one holding the trigger.
Yes, you really were. So being in the middle of all of that, with Fedor flipping from Pride to Anaki, that's really the start of the war.
That was, I think the big war started with themselves when they announced that they were doing 3 shows all on New Year's Eve on prime time, one with TBS, one with Fuji TV, and one with NTV. I think they started this war themselves. I think, first of all, it was always Inoki that Pride and K1 would fight on New Year's Eve at the Inoki Bombardier show. That was the tradition in Japan. So Bombardier will be at the New Year's Eve. But the ratings became so crazy. Like, remember that Shockwave Pride program, the first one where Ernesto Hoost fought Sammy Shield for the first time. Inoki Bombardier actually came in with a glider. There were almost 100,000 people at that stadium. I actually had to drive around the stadium with the car to get to the red corner.
Jesus.
That's how crazy it was.
Those three shows take place on New Year's Eve. They're all fighting for talent. As we had mentioned in the first podcast, Cro Cop gets paid to get hurt in order not to compete.
I mean, that's the rumor. Yeah, I mean, I cannot prove that, obviously, that this is an alleged thing, but it would make sense. And it would be typical for Pride to do a thing like that.
Yuka Tsuji fought Calliope, Gelt Sidu, Fedor fought Yuji Nagota. Yeah. I mean, it's often referred to as a fake fight.
No, it wasn't a fake fight. No. But it was not
both of those.
I'll tell you why it was not a fake. I told Fedor, we'll get you some wrestler, a guy with a name, a wrestler who you can box. But his hand was actually hurt. That's why he how do you say that? He didn't want to fight at the Pride show. His hand was hurt from the previous fight.
Okay.
Like it was in cask and everything. But then they took the cask off early, and I said, look, use that hand as not much. Use the other hand. Try to submit him, and try to do it as soon as possible. This is your new career. If you beat the guy, you're gonna make 3 times more money than you did per fight anyway. I made sure that his fight money went up 3 times from what he originally was making, or 4 times, 3 or 4 times. And Fedor went for it. It wasn't a fake fight. Believe me, it wasn't.
Okay. Well, the Siju or the Suji.
I'm not saying that there were no fake fights. I'm
not
saying that Japan never produced fake fights. I never said it. But that fight wasn't fake. It wasn't.
Okay. Yeah. Right. One of the things that we've also when we interviewed John Peretti, we've had him on several times. He had mentioned that when the UFC would go to Japan, anytime he saw Japanese fighter versus Japanese fighter, 90% of the time it was not a real fight. And when you watch it, you can kind of see why he would say something like that.
You know what? They can say whatever they say, but I can tell you this. Sakuraba became a good friend of mine. And actually, he's right here. I'm going to show you.
Oh, that's awesome. Dude, that's one of my favorite fighters right there.
Okay, so Sakuraba beat 4 Gracies. You're going to tell me now that pro wrestling is bad?
No.
Think about, okay, well, so all these people who always say pro wrestling is bad, this is not good, that is not good. Yes, there's a lot of fake shit going on. Yeah, I know Josh Barnett was also doing some, but Josh Barnett against Sam Shield twice was not a fake fight, man. The first fight, I didn't agree because of the blood in the eye with Shield at the UFC when he did the second fight in the UFC Shield. I think because Shield could not see, he was the one who gave the elbow. It was the big cut on Barnett, bleeding on him because he was sitting in the mouth, and he could not see if he was going to go left or right with an arm, but he couldn't see nothing anymore. And in the rules of the UFC, it said if somebody bleeds that severe and the blood comes in the eye, the fight should have been stopped. And actually, you can hear the Matt Hume screaming that on the sideline.
All right, let me backtrack a little bit because I got off track, not you, but me. Mm-hmm. So December 31st, 2003 was when the big war takes place with New Year's Eve.
Yeah, 2003.
All right, so what I described was the Pride event. Oh no, it was the Inakio Bombardier event. Okay. They had 25,000. They reported 25,000 in attendance, just a flat number. K1 Dynamite headline with Bob Sapp versus Akebono. They said they had 43,560 in attendance. Mm-hmm. Pride Shockwave, which had Nogueira versus Sakuraba. And, they were obviously the ones that were accused of Cro Cop, paying Cro Cop to be injured, had 39,716. Mm-hmm. did Inokie, did he really tank? Was that 25,000 a real number, or did
There were
he?
about 25,000 there. I was there, so I can confirm that. Look, if they were all paid, that I don't know.
Okay.
Like that I don't know. I give good credit to Sakakibara as a promoter, which had a company, I think it's called Udon or Ubon, where he also does the ticket sales. And I think this is where Sakakibara made a big advantage to any other promoters. He works very well with the addresses and keeps the contact with people who are former Pride visitors, and so they have a good usage of the database to sell tickets in advance and not give away free tickets.
All right. So you've got here the smallest show right here with 25,000 in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the UFC has ever even drawn 25,000 up until this date. I don't think they've ever done a stadium show like that.
No, because Japan at that, I mean, I remember the Dome tour. I remember with Peter Arts that we did the Nagoya, the Tokyo Dome, the Nagoya Dome, and there was another one. There were 3 domes. And I think the Tokyo Dome had 60 or 80, 69,000 people. And then the other dome was 70, and then 165. I think it was over 230,000 tickets sold in 3 events.
All 3 events on the same day, and the lowest drawing still, like, and the UFC hasn't done a stadium show like this. So
but it was a national sport in thing. That's why they also wanted to be on New Year's Eve, man. It had, the ratings were so high, everybody was watching fighting. That's why the fighters, you couldn't go over the street, everybody would recognize you. Oh, we just saw you on TV. The fight, it was impossible for the fighters to be unrecognizable.
Wow. That's
it's
incredible.
Like the Super Bowl. It's like the Super Bowl times 100.
That's wild. That's wild.
It is.
The list of Appy Etcheld. We've talked about him a few times, but we haven't really dived into his character. How was your relationship with him?
I didn't have a bad relationship with Appy at all. Like I said, I actually think I saved his life once. I also think that he sometimes says things he doesn't mean, or he is angry and then just produce words which he didn't like. But he's a turner. He turns a lot. He says things and then later, I cannot remember. Oh, that was for this. Oh, that was for that. And then he plays innocent, which it doesn't make any sense.
How did you save his life?
Oh, I told you. What he did is after the tape thing, they had the tape thing.
Okay.
Remember I said you should
okay.
let him come back. So then the tape thing came, and then they taped it, and then those people came to me and they said, "Oh, look what he said," and then I said, "Get a tape." And when they got it on tape, he actually vanished himself, or he vanished from the Dutch fight scene. I think if that wouldn't have happened, he maybe would have, ended up in the trunk of a car.
What about Martjin Dejong?
Martjin Dejong was a good trainer. I didn't have any problems with Martjin. Actually, I didn't have any problems with any of the trainers, man. Zero. Not with Martjin Dejong, not with anybody in the thing. I think Martjin got sour at the end that he said he said, "Oh, I'm also with Golden Glory. I should have got money out of the deal." He got his money from Alister Overeem. I paid him every dime from winning the Grand Prix and also being in the corner from him at that time. He got all that money. But he never paid for the trademarks of Golden Glory, or he never was like Korhamis and me from the beginning with Golden Glory. He wasn't. And even if some of the trainers, like Dave Yonkers, who also was there from pretty much from the beginning, he was a trainer. He was paid as a trainer. He wasn't part of the Golden Glory brand. That was typically me. Actually, I was the only sole holder of the trademarks. My company had the trademarks. Me. But Korhamis, paid his part for the trademarks. So he was in a different position than a lot of the other trainers. And that came also because of my friendship with him and because of the respect for which I had with him for creating very good fighters. We were really, and we still are. I mean, I'm still good friends with him. It stays 2-3 times a year in my guest house in Thailand, even now.
So in August of 2011, there was a controversy with the UFC. Dana White released Shanolov Nanaimo, Marlos Conan, Alister Overeem due to unusual business practices.
Yeah. Well, this was all bullshit. This was a lie, which I proved. And the thing is very simple. Look, I understand Dana White, but we were told when the Strikeforce was taken over by the UFC that the dealings would be the same. Now, the dealings which Golden Glory had with the fighters is that they would be paid at Golden Glory first, and we would take care of the fighters being paid
after
the salary and the trainers. The reason we would do this is that many of the fighters have a big problem when they receive money and forget not only to pay the management, but also the trainers. Yes. First the Maserati, I'll pay you next time with the next fight. That's the same. Maybe not only in Holland, but I think who told me this? Wally, who was a trainer at
Ishmael, Wally Ishmael.
Yeah, he was a trainer at Glenn Robinson, I think. Wally.
No,
he was a trainer at
different guy. You're talking about the Black Zillions.
No, yeah, he was there or at the American Top Team. He was at the American Top Team or at the Black Zillions. And Wally told me he had a similar problem there. He wasn't paid, like he's training daily with the thing, make them better stand-up fighters. He was promised 10%, never came. So anyway, to make a long story short, even that I didn't give a fuck. Because I knew at the end, Alister was going to go to the UFC anyway. Yeah, that was going to happen. And then I had to go by their way anyway. So, and also,
wait a minute. They publicly put you on blast. Like they literally said, we don't do business this way at all. Yeah. How do you?
Did you not see my press? Did you not see my press release?
Of course, I saw your press release, but like, what are the conversations like in order to mend the bridge? Are they aggressive? Are they angry?
Because listen. First of all, I think Dana White and the UFC knew from Ron Nyqvist. I even think Ron was trying to call Dana from jail as well. Just that I am the promoter. I am typically Ron, not letting things rest. Oh, I'm the one behind it. Forget Bas Boon. I'm the big. This would typically be a move that Nyqvist would pull off, which was stupid because the contracts were not in his name, and he doesn't understand that companies who are publicly, they cannot deal with double murders doing 20 years in jail. But anyway, Nyqvist never understood that. Yeah, he would go impulsively if something would be going on, he would call. Now, I think Dana White would have used that in the court case. I think Dana White and Alister would. I think there would have been an advice towards Alister by saying we can get you away from this management because if this guy is behind it, this gangster, you can walk away. It's not a problem because you cannot be managed by. We cannot do business like this, and you can use this to walk away from your management. I think this is one of the things. But the management was with me. My company was in the entails. Had nothing to do with Nyqvist. He had not one share in the company, zero. Yeah. So Nyqvist was not involved. Of course, how I dealt it, how if I paid money or how I did my business is completely different. It doesn't matter. What matters was on paper, there were no problems. Now, when Dana White came with that thing, Malus Kunen and Olaf Animo both showed their check. And they say, what do you mean? We got paid directly. We never complained. Bas never said nothing about it. What are you saying? What do you mean? But what did happen is after that Strikeforce, when Alister Overeem fought Vedrum, and what is his other name? Valentin Overeem, they never paid the management. Alister said immediately, oh, I still get money from Japan. I'm not going to pay you. You're not going to pay the trainer. Not going to pay nobody because he got the money directly. Which I knew was going to be a problem immediately. I knew this was going to be a problem.
Okay. I mean, of course, obvious. It was going to be an obvious issue. But Dana does not like dealing with management, especially to somebody like yourself. I mean, you created a war in Japan like that we had just discussed. Like
I
you
think
were.
Dana White was not really at that point. He wasn't really informed yet how powerful I was in Japan or how I was behind Fedor. Like I said, I had a 2-hour meeting once with Dana White. I don't know if it was later or before that about Fedor and how I would take him away and what happened in that whole 2003 Bombardier thing. I was 2 hours in the office at Zuffa in Las Vegas with him about this. Okay. I think he was a thing that I write that in the book too. I think he shot himself in the foot because he went to Russia with all these things, and later you could hear Joe Rogan go, "Oh, he had to beef up his security because he think the crazy Russians were after him and all this thing." I don't know what happened there. I only know that he said that he threw a lot of money at it, and I think he could have had him for a lot less money if he would have listened to my plan, how I got him in the first place.
Okay, so let me come full circle here. The Fedor conversation does not work out.
Correct.
And then later on,
he goes himself.
But later, of course, but then later on, this takes place. Do you think this was done to spite you because the Fedor conversation didn't work out the way he wanted?
Look, there are more things happen with me in the UFC. This is not the only thing what happened with me in the UFC. For example, I had Dennis Stojnic in the UFC. Now, Stojnic, the Bosnia-Herzegovina fighter, the heavyweight of mine, you can completely see that I got screwed over with this thing. Because I'm making a highlight tape that I have a white heavyweight with 11 fights and 10 knockouts, never lost. I'm introducing in the UFC. Are you guys interested? No, we're not. Joe Silva, Dana White, we're not interested. Okay, so I made a highlight tape, promote this guy in European shows, offer him to the UFC. They say no. 3 months later, Dennis Stojnic calls me, said, "Bas, I'm in the UFC." I said, "What?" "Yeah, I'm in the UFC." I said, "What do you mean?" "Yeah, some friend of mine in Miami, he arranged it." So I think, what the friend of mine in Miami? What the fuck are you saying? So I'm calling, of course, Joe Silva and Dana White. I said, "Bro, what is this? I'm offering you a tape. I give you a copy of the management company. You want to have that because you want to know if you talk to a legit, manager. I'm offering it. Say, oh, at that time we didn't need it, and the other guy came. You have to arrange it with him, and now we just wanted to have it." I said, "What, a replacement? Let me guess. Who you want? So who you want to put him against? Like, what is your upcoming challenge? Let me see." Okay, so I said to Dana White, I said, "Okay, you're gonna put him immediately against Cain Velasquez? Yeah, is that your plan? My fighter, who I built up 11 times, should go immediately against Cain Velasquez? Is that what you do?" "No, it's none of your concern, and you should talk with your guy, that guy in Miami." Now, here's the story. I can go in a lawsuit. I can say I had a legit management contract with Dennis Stojnic, but I would look foolish to the people in Holland, to my team, because Stojnic would go on, "Oh, I have the guy in Miami who could get me into UFC. Bas could not do it. He said he made the tape and everything, but they did not want to have me. But this guy, the guy in Miami, he got me in that."
Who was the guy in Miami? Do you remember the name?
Oh, wait, I'm getting there. It's a funny story. So I said, "Dennis, what the fuck are you doing? A guy in Miami who I don't even know the guy. Who can you?" "Oh, yeah, he had relationship." I said, "Dennis, they're using you, man. They're gonna put you against Cain Velasquez. You cannot win." "I can win against everybody." I said, "Dennis, I know in your head you think like that. I'm trying to build you up. I got a lot of time, work, and promotion in you. Yeah, the 11 fights with knockouts. That whole highlight. Of course, it became into UFC, and they go like, "What a highlight! Fuck, white heavyweight." And okay. No, I can do it. Okay, so first fight, Cain Velasquez, of course, what I thought. So he gets knocked out in round 2. Okay, so Dennis, are you now? He said, "Oh, no, I have one more fight. I get another fight against Stefan Struve." Now look at how the karma works. So he fights Stefan Struve in Germany. I go to Germany. I say hello to Dana White. The Fatedis were there as well. And I said nothing about the whole situation with Dennis. Dennis still fought with Golden Glory shirt, with Corhamus in the corner, because he wants to be with Golden Glory and that family. But I feel not correct, like how this whole thing went. Yeah, it's not okay. So at the end, Stojnic gives an elbow to Struve, and there's so much blood that they get kicked off German TV because of that one fight. So the karma was that of course he lost the fight against Stefan Struve, and now he's out, and he's asking me for fights, and I go, "Hey, listen, Dennis, I built you up. You did a thing. You did. Now Dennis doesn't pay the money to the guy in Miami, and now the guy in Miami starts ratting on Dennis Stojnic and feeding the UFC with all articles that he's with a very famous mafia gang, and that they shot on Dennis Stojnic, and there were problems in the newspapers with newspaper articles in Herzegovina, and all this fucking bullshit going on. And so now the UFC doesn't want to have him anymore, cuts him loose after 2 months. Dennis is off, and nothing happens anymore. So what do I have to do? I have to put Dennis in another show because he's still with Golden Glory, and I want him to fight, and he did something stupid. But anyway, it is what it is. Guess what? The next show is in Serbia. Now, this was in Serbia in the time you still had the bullet holes in the how do you call it? In the hotels where we were, yeah, basically. And in the first row, you had Arkan, the most searched war criminal at that time by the United Nations. He was sitting there just on the front row seat. And listen what happens. So I have Stojnic fighting there, but he comes from Bosnia-Herzegovina. As you know, the Serbs, the Croats, and the fucking Muslims had a huge headache there with ethnic cleansing and everything. And what does stupid Dennis do? Of course, my luck is that he fights against I think a Serb. So you have a Bosnia-Herzegovina against a Serb, and he demolished the guy. I mean, Dennis did very good in that fight. So in the first 1.5 minutes, he kicks the crap out of the guy. But when he wins, he goes into the corner of the ropes and he puts the pride finger like this. Yeah, the finger up. But the audience thinks that he, as a Hesni go in Serbia, that he's flipping the finger and just kicks the fucking Serb. So then they had the security had to take him out to the dressing room. He took our dressing room with Sam Schild. I was there with Sam Schild and other Golden Glory fighters. He took the names of it, but they already knew he was in that dressing room. So I'm there with Sammy Schild. They all suddenly come in with Kalashnikovs and fucking automatic weapons and all kinds of shit. Where the fuck is that started? And I go, oh, it's a mistake. Sammy Schild there with the 2'12" standing there. We are standing all there and go like, no, it's a misunderstanding. Look, it's pride. They put up the finger like this. He didn't flip the finger. Oh my God. Like crazy story, that whole Dennis Stojnic story. But he's still with Golden Glory, and I still like the guy. And I think whatever happened there, it's kind of screwed up how it ended up. But that's just one story I had with the UFC. And it's not correct to do that. And actually the same way we could have had, they could have had Fedor. If the UFC would make me the agent with the legit offer, yes?
Okay.
Then they would have given me the power. And if I could show to what is it? To through the people I knew who could take Fedor away from at that time Vadim, and he would get into a plane with me to Las Vegas, I think I would have done a deal. I would have flown with him to Las Vegas.
Your weekends were very different than most people. Just your Friday, Saturday, home. Sunday was it was very, and then you come home, you're like, no, babe, you won't believe this. No,
I had 11 celebrations in a bus under in the Tokyo Dome or whenever Saitama Super Arena for 11 years. I was never home at New Year's Eve.
Wow. In 2011, obviously, Alister departs from Golden Glory. Do you ever have a conversation with him after this, or is the relationship over?
I did. First of all, I met him a little bit later in Thailand. Here, he was sitting in in a cafe. I was still owner, and I talked a little bit with him. And later, he also went back to Korhemes to train for his fight in Glory with Barahari. He actually got back to Golden Glory too. In this case, Korhemes and his son Nicky Hammers. So, and I'm like this too. I'm not a hateful person. I like to how do you say it? Okay, things done, forget about it. More things happened to me. There was a legit. I mean, we had a legitimator. How do you call it? An old judge who was trying
negotiator
who was going to try to to settle the case, where Alister would walk away the whole time. And a lot of things happened there as well. I don't even need to talk about it. I don't dislike Alister, I think, like I've said in the previous time, if I would be in his shoes with all the problems going on and not receiving the money, I would have tried to point my finger at others as well, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be honest in that. I'm not gonna hide that.
No, you'd be upset, of course. Of course.
Yep.
I mean, it's the game. It is what it is.
Yep.
Fedor went and worked out with Ernesto Hoost in 2004 at Golden Glory.
Well, not with Golden Glory. I mean, there's pictures where you can see us all trained together. Stefan Leko, Melvin Manov is there, Ivo, Alexander Emelianenko, Fedor Emelianenko. You can see that in my book. Those pictures are there. But those were just sessions where we all would come together. But we made that separate team with Red Devil because we thought it was better. And then Appy went to Vos.
He's on Appy Etcheld. Appy
Etcheld went to Vos and Plus to have them train over there because Cor Hemmers was training Heath Herring and all the other fighters, and they needed to have a trainer in Amsterdam, who could, advantage Hoost. They were also in his corner, I think, when he fought Krokop. You can see Jan Plas actually and Vos in his corner.
All right. So there was a rumor that Appy Etcheld would have Fedor fight cheap in Pride and then funnel money to.
No, actually, it's not a rumor because there something funny went on. Like they wanted to do a Pride show in Holland.
Bushido Europe. Yeah.
The Bushido Europe. And I took my hands from it. And the moment I took my hands away from that and not worked, also not as a producer anymore, things, of course, went south. So they had a huge loss at that event. Now, they had another guy at that event. There were three guys. You had Mark. Mark was involved, of Vadim, Appy, and I think the third guy was Michel. Was a guy named Michel. And they did an event, and there was a lot of loss. And what they then said that to Pride, like, we had a lot of loss. We wanted to call it Pride Bushido, but then it became Bushido Pride didn't want to get involved. And then I think what they did is they made Fedor fight cheap. The reason I'm saying is that I had an offer from K1 to get Pride at that time, which I presented to him for 4.1 million. And then he signed with Pride for 450,000 for 2 fights. And I thought that doesn't make any sense. Why would he sign for 2 fights with Pride for 450,000 if he can get 4.1 million for a 2-year contract with K1? That didn't make any sense to me. And this was in time of the war, yeah, the war which was going on. So, and I was the one in between. I was the one offering. Actually, I had the offer in Las Vegas. The 4.1 was on my name, so on my name, on the company name which I had with the guy's name. So then I knew something was off. That didn't make any sense. Why would Fedor sign that he was going to get 450 grand, but he would walk away from 4.1 million and that was MMA, not.
He didn't know about it. Yeah, he clearly didn't know.
He never got the offer. That's it.
Yeah.
He never got the offer. So yeah, I think I cannot prove it. What I can prove is that I had the offer for 4.1 or 2 million, which I gave to Vadim and Appy. Yes. Which I think never went to Fedor at that time. And then they signed with Pride for 450, and it was crazy because Pride, Appy and Vadim, it was funny because they thought, they didn't know about the problems from 2003 Bombay, what happened behind the scene. They had no clue. So they didn't know that Fuji TV already pulled the plug, that Pride basically was without Fuji TV and sponsorship, that there was a lot of problems hanging above their head, and that Vadim was negotiating, or Sakakibara was negotiating with the Federations to sell to the UFC, which they didn't want to go. So at the end, the UFC ended up with Pride. The Fedor contract was not in there anymore because he only signed for those 2 fights, which were the Raw deal. Remember the fights which took in the backyard of Las Vegas with the Thomas Mack Center? So those fights were taken there, and that was crazy because what Sakakibara did was brilliant. I write it in my book too. It was like a show just to sell Pride and to get rid. And then they got a cat in the sack because they bought Pride. Okay, they got the footage, they got the tapes, but they didn't got Fuji TV, and they never got a continuation of the brand.
Okay, so you're describing it as a very poor deal for the UFC, what they received.
Yeah, because they were dead in the water anyway. They were not going to promote anymore because Fuji TV was gone. Police said that they were not allowed to broadcast any more Pride shows. There were, I think, Ishizaka, the Korean guy who was behind it, or one of the backers, he fled the country because of the lawsuit which was done with Mia Mijatovic regarding that problem around 2003 unpaid bills. So
it's a mess.
It was a complete mess. So the thing is, you're buying a cat in the sack.
Okay. Sakakibara.
Yeah.
I got tear here. Was Pride having issues because they were involved with the Yakuza, or was it because it wasn't the right Yakuza to be in bed with, in your opinion?
I think Sakakibara was a promoter by itself. And I think he was surrounded with a lot of people who wanted to have the famous seats around the ring, people who wanted to be seen, who wanted to be around fighters. I don't think indirectly it was with KRS. Yes, KRS was a nest. I saw many people with the lost pinkies, you know. But with Pride, only of course the crazy thing was that I was there when Morishita died in the Hilton. And that was, of course, crazy. They said he hung himself on the curtains from the shower of the Hilton. Bro, you could hang a mouse there and the whole thing would come down. It was the most craziest tinfoil shower shit you could ever imagine, which was hanging. You couldn't hang yourself from that. It's impossible. So I think they killed him. And then it was kind of weird. Like, what happened to the wife? What happened to the inheritance? Because he was the original owner, at least I think the biggest shareholder in Pride at that moment.
Pride, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there was rumors. He hung himself. He was thrown from a balcony. I was
there, man, when they put the ambulance, when the ambulance went away and they put the corpse out
after their biggest event up until that time.
Yeah.
With all that money.
Yeah, and they say suicide because of a mistress. The reason said that he had a mistress. Hey, you had a mistress, man. You're gonna kill yourself after the biggest event. Doesn't make any sense. But I mean, it happened. I mean, that's the official thing. But I think Sakakibara was a great promoter. He came from the promotion business, and he just did a hell of a job, and he's still doing it.
Okay,
even rising again.
So Sakakibara has all the issues with Pride. It's Yakuza, related. He's getting hammered publicly. He's never been charged with a crime.
Correct. That's why I think he's not only smart. I think Sakakibara, he didn't commit any crimes. I'm writing in my book too that my sympathy. He stayed not long ago one of my houses here when he came to Pattaya. He stayed here and we talked about it. I have a picture with him, me, Marat Gregorian, and Kohemus here in my park. And we were discussing about some new business. I admire him. He's building up Horizon again. He's doing it again.
Okay,
again, he had the same problem again.
But that's the issue. Okay, so he built. Okay, all right. It's Yakuza related. He starts a new business with Ryzen, and the exact same thing happens. So
correct.
But he's never been charged legally. So is Sakakibara? He's allowed to live. He's allowed to work. But if his business gets too successful, we have to take it away from him. It's the most bizarre thing ever.
Looks like it, but like I said, a lot of
it's total bullshit.
Now the thing is, the problem is, it only takes one journalist, and I know this as no other guy, man, because I played that violin. I fed journalist pieces, leaks, the shit. I've been all over this thing, so I know when I know how this works. You just need one jealous guy or one coming up with some bullshit. It can be a half truth, or it can be
rival promoter.
Some fire, but you just make it so big that you think that it's all Sakakibara, which I think is bullshit.
he's never been criminally charged. Forget convicted. He's never even been charged.
No,
It's not right.
no, it's not right. But I mean, like, you know, if you look at what happened, is that I was there and my lawyer had a fucking gun on his head, and his
Oof.
family had to move. So, and I'm not saying that it was Sakakibara who gave the assignment for those people to do whatever they did, but it happened. I actually think he doesn't even know about what happened. I think these people went like, oh, you have a problem with Fedor, I will solve it for you, or will. I seriously don't think. I seriously don't think that it's. I think they were also there in there for themselves, because I remember that they said to Kawamata he had to come up with $1 million to use Fedor in the show of Bombardier, and $1 million fine because of the problems he caused with Pride. Those are the words from Kawamata. Yeah.
So we're 2 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how series like Dark Side of the Cage can exist, and they haven't personally come to meet you or flown you out to California. Either they have no idea what they're talking about.
I also think it has to do with myself. After the promotion, after I sold Glory and I was president of Glory Kickboxing, I actually basically quit myself. I said, just give me my salary for the coming year and a half. Do it yourself. I didn't want to be involved in it. I got again the jealousy. The fighting started again internally. Lots of people again with their bullshit, the lies, the manipulation. I needed to start taping again CEOs who were playing games behind my back and things. At the end, I don't want to. I was tired, man. I had so much fights. I had so much. I solved that whole headache from Japan. I had 35 years behind me, and I go like, now I'm finally where I am with a clean
You need a
organization,
break.
with clean money behind it, with
Need a
good
break.
people. And now I gotta. Now comes the CEOs, the shareholders, the people in the board who think they know everything better, and I think like, no. This is not for me, man. Not anymore. So I just took I went like, okay, I'm still good friends with Pierre, man. I really like what he did for the sport. I think he really meant well, and he got he was used as a lot of bloodsuckers around him, man, around that
This is
guy.
just a small portion of what you've done in your career. Like,
Correct.
this is we haven't really like we're maybe 30% in. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's we're 30% in, and it's just one thing after another, very, very high end. I mean, one would argue that you don't sleep.
I
You
didn't
don't.
in that time, maybe 3 to 4 hours, 7 days a week.
I mean, you had Bader Hari taking 10 years off the sport. Spike TV dropped K1, picked up Glory. Like there's so much
Yep,
here.
yep, yep.
You know, you were in the
And I
hospital for
can
two
tell you
weeks after you
something
found out
about
your
those
fight.
first years with Glory
Yeah.
as well. If I can make another episode about that one, what happened behind the scene. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You're in the hospital for 2 weeks after the whole UFC incident. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. A lot of things happen, but I mean, like I said, I don't want to. I don't want to put bad words out for anybody, because we were all busy building a sport and trying to make our way. Even Appy, or even Ron, when he used too much coke, he could become very unreliable and thing. And what he did, of course, when I sold and make a solution for everything, and then trying behind my back to use all the advice and the knowledge he had against me, is terrible. I mean, like, if you have somebody taking care for you for 12 years in jail, do everything for you, and then at the end make you a good deal, and then what you do is like, okay, I'm going to start my own organization behind his back and use the information which other people should not know, basically. That wasn't cool. That was, at that time, I was really. And also Corhammers, he broke all the relationship with him when he found out that he wanted to do a thing with Ramon, with the like, for a management company.
Decker Diamond. Yeah.
He could not stand behind that, man. That was not his thing.
Do you drink? You said you don't drink.
No, don't drink, don't use drugs, never.
No alcohol,
No,
no
no,
weed, mushrooms,
no,
nothing, huh?
no. I tried here when the weed became legal in Thailand 2 years ago or something. I tried a little weed to calm down because I'm always so hyper, and it is not good because my heartbeat is already low. And when I start smoking, it becomes lower and it becomes at a dangerous level low. So it's just not for me, man. I just should stay
I,
away from all that thing. It doesn't.
I don't think people understand what an advantage being sober is. Like having a clear head. The advantages
I think it's a.
is
I think it's
unbelievable.
it's an. I think it's what Trump said, man. Remember what Trump said? Don't smoke and don't drink because if his brother died. I think once you see the examples of what it can do in your family, especially in your family, or from close by, you've seen certain things. It is devastating, man. And if you understand that, then it becomes very clear that. Remember, I didn't know if I said that in the first episode, but there is two guys who grew up with the alcoholic father where they
Yeah.
beat it. Remember?
Yeah.
One takes it as like, oh, my father was that. The other guy like, I never want to be like this. The billionaire guy who became billionaire. Like people take events at a different way, and and somebody learns from it, and the other people they will stay in
Become
that
a
circle,
yeah.
and they'll.
Dana White built the UFC to where it's at today completely sober. I know he drinks now, but for a very long stretch of time, you go to the parties, you go to the social events, you stay
I
sober.
never did that, by the way. Yeah,
I
you would
hardly
not see
either.
me. You would not see
Yeah.
me at after parties or anything. That was just not my thing. By the way, I didn't have time for it. When an event would take place, I would go immediately to the people from Gong Magazine or any of those guys. I would get a USB stick of the most best pictures, and I would write a blog already, or I would write a piece for them for newspapers in the Netherlands about the semi-winning or Golden Glory victories, or updating my website. I never spent time, man, to go out to. Very few times I've been there to Motown or to one of those clubs. Didn't give a crap. Zero.
You are a legend within the sport. We're definitely going to be in touch. And John Olaf, and am I
Animal.
Animal? He doesn't do interviews at all.
No, yeah, Animal is he's by itself. He tried and then he got unlucky a few times. I think he could have won that first fight in the UFC.
He
But he
does, yeah. Well, I was at this Mike Russo fight. He doesn't do interviews. He's not on social media. He's one of the most
No, he's
impossible.
by himself. But some people just they don't listen. Me also, I've been a long time out of this game, and I never wanted to go into the public like I'm now for the first time doing.
It's
I'm gonna
three
start doing.
years.
Yeah, but
I've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 years.
I'm
Look at our
I'm gonna
messages.
start. I'm gonna start doing this more, maybe even with Joe Rogan in the future, I guess, because of not only to promote the books, but like I said, I think this would make a Netflix TV series on a very special way. You not only have a true story, but you also have the people who were involved who at the end of an episode actually could speak about it or could give it a little humoristic thing. If you see in my book, I have a lot of quotes. My quotes I have on the events, which I think are making it would make it a very interesting project. Yeah.
Bas Boon, I will be in touch. Thank you, sir. I
There you
appreciate
go.
that. Take care,
Thank
brother.
you.
Yep,
Yes.
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I've given you about 2 hours, about 3 hours and 40 minutes of a guy. And I've still got I got about 2.5 pages of notes still. And like that 2.5 pages of notes, I kind of cut my research off. There's more. But the issue is like the internet, it's been scrubbed of Bas Boon. Google him. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I had a bad day. I couldn't find a single thing. So all of the notes that I have, I've been kind of taking over the years. I can't find anything else on him at all. But like I said, I got about 2 pages, two and a quarter pages, which equals another episode like this, minimally, along with conversation. So if you guys like this, please like, share, subscribe. We're doing commercials every 20 minutes now. If there's issues in any of the episodes with it, please put a comment, put a comment down on YouTube, and we'll definitely take care of it. If you listen to this on Spotify, I really need a rating on it. Like I'm about 108, 109. I need to like triple that to be in regular algorithms. If you're listening on Apple, dude, if you're listening on Apple, you got to give me a review. Like you got to do it. I've given you almost 4 hours of content on a guy that hasn't done an interview in 3 years. I need 30 seconds of your time. Do an interview or do a review on Apple, and I'd greatly appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you like that as much as I did.